will now move on to the next panel. We are glad that you are here, and we will keep you in the background, but we will now continue with the next panel, and I think we say one big thank you once more to both mayors. So thank you. We will now connect and continue these local insights with national and international perspectives and reflection. So I would like now to kindly ask our second panel to take the stage. We have Olga Romero with us. She is the Director of Public Policy Evaluation at the Colombian National Planning Institute. Very glad to have you. Please take your seat. And our second panelist is Dr. Stefan Bauerfeind. He's the head of division for sustainable development within the Federal Chancellery of Germany. A warm welcome to you as well. It's good to have you. And please take your seat. And last but not least, we have, and here I think we need a big clap of hands, we have virtually connected Mr. Dr. Fernando Ortiz Moya. He's a senior researcher at the Institute for Global Environmental Studies, ITIS at Japan. And yeah, if you maybe can calculate, it's quite late, very early in the morning for him, and he's still up, and I really appreciate that he's here and shares his reflections today. So hopefully we can see him as well at the stage. Okay, here we are. So warm welcome to all of you. I would now like to start the second panel, that you give us your reflections about the value added of VLRs from a national and international perspective. We will start with Olga, then Fernando, and last but not least, Dr. Bauerfeind, and then we go into the discussion.
One second. See, do you hear me? Yeah. So I want to say first to say some greetings and thank you again for the invitation to be here and talk about the importance of the voluntary local reports. I want to extend my greetings to all the members of the German Council of Sustainable Development and the Stockholm Environment Institute, and also the two mayors from Bonn and Pereira from Colombia, and also to my panelists, my colleagues in the panel. So we all have talked here about the importance of including the locals, the territorial government into the SDG implementation, and voluntary local reports are the instrument to go in that way, right? These instruments allow us to measure how at the local government we are improving or moving forward into the SDGs. They let us also make improvements into the way of the SDG agenda, and also to have some transparency for the citizens on how to improve. And in the case of Colombia, this year is very important because we are having the first experiences of the voluntary local reports. You were talking about Bonn. Bonn is the second time is doing a voluntary local report in Colombia. This is kind of like our first step into moving in that scenario, and it's very important because also what is going to happen, and I think what we will be aiming for, is that the experiences of Pereira in the voluntary local report will hopefully hopefully give information to other regions in Colombia so that they can improve and move forward into the SDG agenda and implementation. So definitely it's a very good instrument, and we need to move forward in that sense. But I want to close, I guess, my first thoughts and reactions with two challenges that I think we do have ahead in thinking about the voluntary local reports. And one that we were discussing when we were thinking about the event yesterday with Hannah, is that which spaces do we use to to talk about these reports, where do we present them, where do we congregate all these local voluntary reports so that we can actually make the use of them the most. And then I think the second challenge, and the one that I think I want to reflect on, is how do we move from big cities or cities with more capacity to municipalities with lower capacity and smaller ones that have not taken into consideration the SDGs to move forward. So I think those are like the two reflections that we need to keep thinking about the inclusion of these voluntary local reports into the implementation of the SDG agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your reflections. So we continue with Fernando Ortiz. Moya, I hope you are there.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. It's truly my pleasure to be able to speak about voluntary local reviews and how they are accelerating localization of the SDGs, also sharing some insight from my own research. So as you are well aware, the first VLRs were presented here at the high-level political forum for sustainable development some 4 years ago. And ever since, more than 100 local and regional governments have conducted a VLR, some of them, like for example the case of Bonn today, even more than once. So what I want to do my reflection is about why are cities embracing in greater numbers, and year after year a growing number of cities are embracing the VLR as part of the sustainable development strategies and as a way to localize global agendas. So in my work, I have enjoyed seeing how many VLRs have evolved from being just a tool to report progress toward the SDGs at the local level to serve larger purposes and also help within local administrations. So, for example, just to provide two cases of how VLRs has been supporting the work of local governments. To begin with, the VLRs are really helping to strive for greater policy integration, creating bridges between policy silos within the local administration and allowing to find synergies between strategies while also limiting negative outcomes and trade-offs. So, for example, VLRs are helping local governments to recalibrate local policies to maximize their impact to fulfill the 2030 agenda. One of such examples is the small town of Shimokawa in Hokkaido here in Japan, with just around 3,000 inhabitants and very far away from any big population center. The town, in order to conduct the VLR, they have an extensive stakeholder engagement process, and based on this stakeholder engagement process, they reformulated their local policies and created the Shimokawa Vision 2030 that brought the spirit of the SDGs across all departments and helped to really maximize the localization of the 2030 agenda. So also at the same time, VLRs are really helping to create channels for multi-level governance. So there is a number of examples, like for example, Sweden or Finland, also Germany, with national and local levels of government are cooperating to integrate VNRs and VLR processes, strengthening the communication between different levels of government, really help to maximize the capacity of local governments to tackle challenges and to achieve the SDGs. So this is just, of course, a testament of the importance of creating avenues to establish a fluid dialogue between national, regional, and local level governments to not only to implement the 2030 agenda, but to cope any of the other issues that we are facing today. So just to conclude, like overall, VLRs have positioned themselves as an amazing tool to accelerate work on the SDGs and are allowing cities to make a difference at the global level. So at a time, as you know, that humanity is facing a number of unprecedented challenges, it is very encouraging to see a number of cities joining the VLR movement, growing year after year. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Bauernfeind, please, we would like to have your reflection.
Well, thank you very much. Well, Excellencies, State Secretaries, members of delegations, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to be here at this important Society Minutes honor. And before I have some short reflections for myself, I would like to react on some things which have been said. First one, we are not on track. Second, we have to step up efforts. And just transition has to happen at the local level. That's absolutely true, I totally agree on that. And coming from this point, I would like to thank first the representatives of the cities. It was really very impressive to learn what has been done, to see the significant efforts to take on global responsibility to foster the SDGs. That's really very impressive. And one sees that these efforts on the local level are based on the needs of the communities. So it's really adapted to the situation, on the local situation. That's very important. Well, my own responsibility, key responsibility, is the German sustainability strategy. It's this very short paper on the last one. It's from 2021, the last one. And my own task is thinking about implementation inter alia. And so that's the reason why the cities are so very important in implementing the SDGs. Cities are key players. They are key players in the implementation of the SDGs because they are centers of innovation and growth on one hand. So they are really active. And on the other hand, they are hotspots quite often for energy and resource consumption and the origin of pollution. That's the other side of the coin. So it's very important to have them to implement the SDGs. And it's especially true in Germany. In Germany we have not a centralized system, we have a federal system. We could say it's a multi-level federal system. And in this kind of system, each level of the government bears joint responsibility for the implementation of the SDGs. And so that's the reason why it's important to have on the local level then something like sustainability strategies, it was already mentioned, all these activities in this area, and now this voluntary local reviews. It has been said, and I totally agree, that it makes the contribution more visible, and it can be helpful for monitoring. It shows what really is happening. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has already been stressed that it's a big task ahead of us, and not much time left. We have a decade of action, and only 8 years left of this decade of action, and it's our common responsibility of all actors, of all levels, to go on implementing the SDGs. And let me please close with a remark in the direction of the Council for Sustainable Development. It's less than a remark than thank you. I would like to thank the Council for its commitment and for being quite sometimes a very demanding councillor for the federal government. It's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we now would like to move into the discussion. I think I give it a start with you, Olga Romero. It's a pleasure to have you, and thanks for your reflections. My question for you would be, like, what are the connections and impulses that you would take from VLRs for national delivery of the SDGs? And maybe even vice versa, like what are the feedback effects of national strategies for municipalities? Where do you see the connections? Where is potential for deeper connection and development?
Good. Thank you for the question. I'm going to address it, telling you a little bit of how the institutionality of the SDGs in Colombia works and how we have moved into these kind of strategies to move into the territory, and then how it has also at the national level helped us in moving to the SDG agenda. So in Colombia we have a high-level commission for the SDGs that is the members of this high-level commission are different members from different ministries in the country. And we have the technical secretary within the National Planning Department. And something very important and that has been mentioned within is that we just launched it, that this high-level commission has an is going to have some relationship with a new multi-stakeholder platform that we just launched. And something very important is that it has members from civil society, the international cooperation, the academia, but it also has a member from the local government, so that is going to help us move into that direction of this interaction between the national and the territorial level. Within understanding, and then as we have talked about here so far, public policies are effective when they are conceived from the bottom up. So the high-level commission has different instruments to implement the SDGs, and one of them is the National Planning Department, which at this moment has also some territorial pacts. So it was constructed from the territories to advancing these SDGs, and it is fully aligned with the SDGs. And we also have this policy document that gives us how we should move into the 2030 agenda and into the SDGs, and we have 4 components or 4 strategies in that document, which the first one is the monitoring and evaluation, the second one is the involvement of non-governmental stakeholders, the third one is strengthening that statistical capacity, and the fourth one, which is very important and is the one that I want to emphasize, is the strategy into moving this SDGs into the territory. And then in that one in specific, we have been working in 2 major areas. One is including in our territorial kit that we have at the National Planning Department a model of SDGs, so that the territorial development plans, as the mayor of Pereira was telling us, could include the SDGs in their planning tools. And something that we developed last year, and hopefully is going to move in that more municipalities like Pereira present or have their local voluntary reports, is that we created a guide for presenting local voluntary reports that we created with UNDP and the network of cities in Colombia. So that guide gives some guidelines on how to present local voluntary reports, the importance, the different methodologies, what to focus, the indicators, or how to present indicators in these voluntary local reports. So that is something that hopefully is going to lead more municipalities to present local voluntary reports. And what have we been seeing, and it kind of gave us that feedback from the national to the territorial level, is that we have seen an increase in the inclusion of the SDGs in the development territorial plans. We actually did some text mining analysis of all the most of 1,000 development territorial plans that were developed 2 years ago from the different territorial entities, and we saw that SDGs were being included in their planning tools, but we also saw a lot of heterogeneity. And I'm going to go back to the challenge that I was mentioning, in that some municipalities have more capacity than other ones to embrace the SDGs and to move forward into the 2030 agenda. So we also have to tackle that when we are thinking about this. And then finally, I do want to highlight the importance of different stakeholders, as we were mentioning, and the importance of this multi-stakeholder that we just launched, and how in this platform that has 11 members, we are including the local government, a representative from local government, so that we can move forward into this, into understanding that SDGs do come from the base of the municipalities, from what they are doing, and that is going to move us in the national direction of achieving the SDGs. Thank you.
Super, thank you, Olga, and I think we'll come back to some of those issues because they're really related to what we've heard also from the other speakers. And before we get to your questions, maybe I have a question from Stefan. because I was wondering if you have some examples, perhaps, of how, since we're thinking about how to integrate also these levels, right, the local government and the national government, maybe some examples of what the German government is doing at the national level to work more closely together with local governments, either in reporting or just SDG implementation in general?
Okay, but actually, yes, there is quite a lot of things which are existing. So one thing has already been mentioned quite often today. It's the support which is given by the federal government for the integration of sustainability aspects in the day-to-day work of the cities and of municipalities, like developing sustainability strategies at the local level. And I mean, at the moment, in 10 of 16 federal countries, such activities exist, and it was mentioned that 200 municipalities part of this club is mentioned. So this is something which exists, and I would like perhaps add something more. On a different level, this is an activity of the Council for Sustainable Development, which I like very much. This activity is called Sustainability City Dialogue. That's a dialogue of more than 30 mayors, exists since 2010 in Germany. It's very helpful to have this high-level group discussing these aspects. So that's the base at the moment, but I would like to look a little bit into the future for you. Because there's something coming on in Germany in the next time. It's called Joint Action for Sustainable Development. What is this? I think we all know that sustainable development cannot primarily, or in the end not at all, be reached if we go from top down. It must be created by the whole society. That's the basis idea. And so this idea of the joint action was developed, and the Council has taken over the coordination and the implementation of this joint action. And in Germany, this is the base of this idea exists at the moment. A lot of activities, many local activities in the cities, or NGOs, and quite often you don't see these activities. They don't get the level of publicity which they need, and they don't know each other. So that was the idea, to promote these activities, to win more actors for these activities, and to help actors to share and develop solutions. So that's the idea of this joint action. And it will start in September. There will be an internet application in the main element. And with this teaser, I would like to stop. I hope that in next year we can explain a little bit more about it. I hope I make you curious to hear a little bit more at the next Agile we have next year. I'm looking forward very much, and I hope it will be very helpful. So thank you to the Council again, and looking forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us a reason to want to come back to New York next year, so we can learn more about this. I wanted to check if Fernando is still there. Fernando, are you still awake and with us?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you to coffee. Very good. Thank you, Fernando. Maybe a question for you would be, from your research, you were talking about how everybody is preparing more and more of these local reports. Have you seen some very interesting or key topics that could become drivers of this connection, going back to the connection of local to national? Where are the topics where you think, oh, these are good entry points for the two levels to work more together?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think that based on my research, the integration between the local and national level is something that started later on in the process of the VLR. So the VLR started more as a bottom-up exercise of cities wanting to show their commitment and to review their initiatives, and this connection between both levels of government has been growing. And to begin with, I think it's very important to create channels for communication. It's very important for local and national governments to be able to talk and create these mechanisms or ways to have fluent way to discuss issues and to support. Also, I think it's very important to capacity building projects and to support local administrations. As it's been discussed before, the VLRs has been moving with many big cities, and especially with important cities, big economic centers, but there are also many small and medium-sized cities which might not have enough resources or might find it very challenging to start the work on the VLRs. So creating this capacity building and supporting their journey at the local level that will really help for more cities at the start, because arguably if you look at the 2030 agenda for the first time, I've seen a lot of things to do, too many goals, too many targets, too many indicators, and it's guiding also cities and creating these mechanisms for supporting is very important. And another thing that I've been looking, I have observed by reviewing VLR reports and talking with cities, is the importance of creating indicators that are at the national level that cities can also implement in their own context, because one of the challenges is always the data issue, data gaps, and the indicators might not be valid or might not be depending on the national context, and each country might be different. So if there is a common framework, a common language that can help to connect the different levels of government, I think it's an emerging trend that is happening, and there is a growing number of countries that are creating examples of this, like, as I mentioned before, for example, Finland or Sweden. Also here in Japan it's happening. And I see that moving forward we will see a greater coordination between both different levels, and also a greater integration of VNRs and VLRs, with voluntary local reviews taking a more prominent role in voluntary national reviews, which is something that started more or less, it was kind of an embryonic shape in 2020. In 2021 it was already getting more significant, and I think right now we are seeing how hopefully in current VLRs and future years this will be a more important topic and a more important driver of both national and local reviews.
That is super interesting. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Maybe now we show Fernando that we're also very awake here in the room, not just him, and see if we have one or two questions for our panel. Perfect, there we go. The two already taken, very good.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Felix and Anna to invite us to this side event. I am Kola, coming from Togo. I'm the facilitator of the CSO group of the implementation of the SDG Togo. I have one question, or two questions. I will do it like this. Which role for the CSO? First, for the localization of the SDGs, and the second one for the Vienna, or the recommendation of the Vienna when going back to our countries. Because for me, this is an opportunity to build together, to discuss, and but when we are going back in our countries, it's finished. There is no place for, there is no action for the CSO groups, and all the public actors will continue the process, and we will sit together at another Vienna. What can we do for this?
Perfect, thank you so much. Let's take the second one already, and then that was behind, right behind it.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Madam Moderator, and congratulations to Bonn, the cities of Bonn and Pereira, for your great work. My name is Annika Lindblom. I come from the government of Finland, and I've been one of the architects of the Finnish VNR, and also working quite closely with the cities in Finland. Maybe this is just a piece of information, but we have started, like the Ministry of the Environment of Finland has started this kind of a strategic partnership for the SDGs in cities together with UN Habitat, and as a first approach or first step, we have started a twinning process between the city of Tampere in Finland and the city of, I have to look at here, Mwanza in Tanzania, and we are willing to expand this exercise. So this is really, I think, rewarding to those cities that have been active already at the national level, and also working between the cities in Finland to really expand the cooperation to other countries, and learn also from other countries, and expand the community of VLR frontrunners, which the cities of Bonn and Pereira definitely are as well. my sort of question or comment is that how can we facilitate and make sure that these kinds of different twinning processes are feeding to each other and speak to each other and can be then expanded maybe also to other areas or other regions of the world. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Annika. Who wants to take the question on CSOs for not only localization but monitoring, or the one on VNRs and VLRs? You want that one? Go ahead. We have a taker.
I would like to thank you to Finland, and I forgot to mention something. Our joint action was inspired by Finland. What Finland has been explaining its HPF, so it's you, more or less, and would like to give this credit. And concerning now the question how to create something which can be transferred to the other areas. Well, I think there's no one-fits-all solution. We always to find tailor-made approaches. And for me, it's the most important that implementation really works on the ground, that something is happening. And if, say, people start with SDG 1 or with SDG 17, it's not so important for me. But they have to start. So that's my main aim. And if it's worked, then it's okay, and it must not be structured. But if, of course, sometimes structure helps, no question. But it's not the main aim for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Olga, CSOs?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the translation. Sorry. Definitely, and I think it's important for the involvement of the civil society and the different stakeholders is to have different schemes where you can, or organizations where you can involve them. In Colombia, as I was telling you, we launched this multi-stakeholder platform, and it has both the national government, the local government, and we have academia, civil society representation, and also international cooperation. And we also have a member of the parliament, so that helps us to have the different stakeholders at least sitting down in the same table to talk about it. And in terms of national voluntary local reports, national voluntary reports, but also local voluntary reports, I think it has to be a participatory process where you involve different stakeholders, but having this kind of mechanisms as the multi-stakeholder platform will let you and assure you that you have the different stakeholders involved. And I do want to refer a little bit to the question of from Finland in the sense that as a challenge that I was thinking is from the beginning is in which spaces can we promote or use these local voluntary reports so that we make the use of them and we expand the idea better. And I think that is something that we need to reflect more and think about it. Where do we want to do that? Yeah.
Perfect, thank you, Olga. Fernando, do you want to take one of the two questions?
Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate further, I think connecting VNR with VLRs, as it's been mentioned, I think it's very important for cities to see how the VLR can really help them the most to get the work done on the SDGs. And sometimes looking at the 17 SDGs might be overwhelming. So if a city chooses to work on 3 or 4 or any number of SDGs that are relevant to them, the VLR is a very good exercise to really set up priorities, see, and really make this work help the city and help the development. So you can choose also to reflect, and if in the case, for example, in cities that doesn't have such a strong stakeholder engagement platforms, the VLR can help you to create and launch those platforms and start creating a network of local stakeholders, or maybe also use the VLR to reach out to your national government to start creating mechanisms to communicate and to work on the SDGs. So it's always the thing local governments need to be aware of their own context, of their own requirements, and think how they can better utilize the VLR, because there is not one single format for conducting a VLR. There are many different ways, and as soon as you start seeing reports from all over the world, going from Finland, Germany, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, in Spain, parts of Africa, Asia, you can see that there is a great variety, and the VLRs are always responding to the local context, and usually, and they are always trying to make the most for the city. So I think it's very important to also think how you can utilize the VLR for your advantage and to really get your city to be a better place in the short, mid, and long term.
Perfect, thank you so much. And with that, maybe you join me in thanking our panelists and giving them a good applause for all of their insights. And with that, we leave the stage now and give it over to Marc-Oliver Pahl, who is the Secretary General of the Council for Sustainable Development. Marc-Oliver, maybe you can tell us what you learned today. What do you think of the discussions we've had so far, and where should we move forward? You want to go for it?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to all the speakers and organizers of this event today, mainly Anna, Yvonne and Felix from the INE and from the Stockholm Environment Institute. I think this was a very valuable contribution to the debates of the high-level political forum, and I hope that we can take some messages home. Many thanks also to the German government and the permanent mission here in New York. I think this was a nice framework for our discussion we had here. Yeah, I think one clear message is that local activities are of utmost importance for reaching the SDGs in 8 years' time. This is not a new message. It was already part of the original 1992 Rio conference, where the local Agenda 21 played a very important role with activities all over the world, but it lost a little bit dynamic over the years, and therefore the SDGs and the 2030 agenda were a new impulse for these activities on the local level. And I think it was not mentioned today, the city of New York was the first to present a VLR here at the HLPF to overcome a little bit the lack of activities on the national level in the US. It's sorry that there's no VNR of the United States government so far, but maybe all these activities create a kind of impulse which will in the end also lead to activities on the national level in this country here. Yeah, I think we have seen that there is a broad movement on local activities in the global north and in the south. Colleague from Japan explained a little bit his scientific research, and we have seen two impressive examples, but they are only examples. So it's not, the work is not done if we have 2 or 20 or 100 cities which are active. We need all cities to be involved. That's the overall target, and I think it was made clear by many of the speakers that in the end, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We need adapted versions which are really addressing the pressing needs and respecting the concrete environment in each and every city. But I think still the exchange of practices play an important role. Stefan Bauernfeind mentioned the idea of joint action coming from Finland to Germany and maybe to other cities and to other countries in the world, and I think this kind of dynamic cooperation can take place also on the local level. Maybe one point I missed a little bit, it came up a little bit in the last discussion, that the international perspective in what is happening in the cities plays a quite important role. So we are all interconnected. What the cities are buying, for example, or the local companies, which the cities often play a major role as stakeholders are doing, that affects also cities and people elsewhere in the world. For example, we have in Germany electricity companies which are belonging to the cities, which buy coal from South Africa or from also from Colombia, I think. And these connections, these supply chain question, for example, and also the migration question, climate change question, also these activities are connected and should be reflected in this kind of VLRs, and I think for this international exchange is very important. In Germany we have the tradition of twin cities. For example, also the city of Bonn is very much involved. The BMZ is supporting programs for this exchange, and I think to activate these twin city networks for joint activities on the local level, this would be a major plus for what is happening in the implementation of the SDGs. So I think with this workshop today, but also with the activities of the different partners involved here, we can really contribute to the implementation of the SDGs and to speed up the process, as we are all aware that we have very urgent problems to solve when it comes to biodiversity, to climate change, etc. And as Stefan Bauernfeind already mentioned, this is not the only activity of the German Council for Sustainable Development, this kind of support of cities with VLRs. We are having a broad dialogue with all cities in Germany, bigger ones and smaller ones. Our member, Markus Lewe, president of the German Cities Association, you have seen also in the film, is very active in this field. And we started 2 years ago with also involving smaller cities, not just the bigger cities, also cities from the rural areas, which also play an important role. And what is also necessary to mention, we have a global network where the RNE is active together with partners from all over the world, also many partners from Africa, and I'm happy that you also participated in this side event today, and to bring this message of more local involvement also in this network. Our global forum for SDG advisory bodies will be something we have high on the agenda for the next year. Together with a joint action for sustainable development, our Gemeinschaftswerk Nachhaltigkeit, which will start in about 2 months' time. Chancellor Scholz will open this new initiative in Berlin, and I think this will be a very good topic indeed for the next HLPF in July next year, where we will once again be present as R&D together with our international partners. And next year we also have the SDG Summit in September. It's still very open what will happen there. Our government representatives will take part in the final negotiations on the ministerial declaration, which will be passed tomorrow. And we hope that despite the difficult international circumstances we have with the Russian war against Ukraine, we have a certain perspective that by next year we have a new consensus on many important topics, and that this SDG summit in September next year can be a breakthrough like the adoption of the SDGs has been in 2015. Once again, many thanks. You are invited to take part in our light lunch also after this meeting. Also, best greetings to all virtual participants, and I hope that we will take a lot of messages home and continue our work in our cities around the world. Thank you.